What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another video. Today, we are starting our Data Analyst Portfolio Project Series. Now, before we jump into our first project, I wanted to talk with you for just a second so that we're all on the same page. First thing is that there are going to be 4 projects. The first one is going to be SQL, and we're doing a lot of data exploration, and we'll be setting up a lot of our data to visualize it in Tableau. Tableau is going to be our second project. In our third project, again, we're going back to SQL, but we're going to be doing a lot more of the ETL process, so a lot more of the data cleaning. I did that one as the third project because I think it's going to be a little bit more advanced than this first project. I tried to make it as beginner friendly as possible. So even if you are a complete beginner, as long as you've walked through the tutorials that I have made on my channel, you should be pretty good. And then the fourth and the final project will be with Python. We'll be using a lot of pandas, doing a little bit of data cleaning, and then doing visualizations as well. As I said just a second ago, I'm trying to make this as beginner friendly as I possibly can. The whole point of this series is that if you are trying to apply for a data analyst job, by the end of the series, you should have an entire portfolio, or at least a really good start at a portfolio to show a potential employer. I give you full permission to copy every script, every query line for line, if that is what you want to do and create your own portfolio. I am totally fine with that, but I will encourage you, and I'm sure I'll say this throughout the video, I encourage you to try to think of your own queries, try to think of your own insights and your own things that you can do to make this portfolio project unique. With that being said, I'm super excited to get started on this with you guys. So let's jump over to my screen and get started on our very first project. All right, so now that we are on my screen, we are going to get started on this project. We're going to download the data set. We are going to format it just a little bit in Excel, and then we're going to get it into SQL where we will start querying it. I will say that I think this is going to be a very long video. I'm hoping to keep it under an hour and a half. I may separate this into 2 videos depending on how long it runs. But I will do my best to keep it short, but we have a lot to get through. I'm going to basically do no cuts. That's my goal, is to do no cuts in this, because I want to walk you through each step of the process so that you understand everything that's going on and you don't get lost at some point. But I think this is probably the best way to do it. We'll see. The very first thing we're going to do is download our data set. So as we are looking at this, there's an option right here to download the data set. I don't recommend that one. You can, it just won't give you all the information that I personally want, which is to go back to like the very beginning. If you go down right here to the very first graph, you can actually push this back and then download it. And what this will do is it will go back to, I think, January 1st of 2020. So let's open this one up. And when we get in here, we're going to reformat it just a little bit. It's nothing too complicated, I hope. I'm just going to double click here. Actually, let me go up here and filter, just in case we want to filter anything. So what we have here is a ton of information on COVID. I mean, just a ton. And it goes back to early 2020. I believe it does go back to the 1st of 2020. So really quick, a really brief introduction of what kind of data is in here. We have total cases, new cases, total deaths, new deaths. We use those quite a bit in the queries that are coming up. If we go way over here, we have total vaccinations, people vaccinated. And then over here a little bit farther, we have population. That's the main stuff we're going to be working with today. As you can see, there's so many other things in here. I mean, you can use this if you want to go back and do more stuff on this. I highly recommend it. There's such unique data in here about smokers and diabetes and like all this random stuff that I did not do a deep dive in. I mean, I could spend, a month just like looking at this data set and getting really interesting stuff from it. But I'm not going to do that. I wanted to do this faster than 2 months to complete. What we're going to do is we're going to go back over here and we're going to take this population and we're going to click on this AS and we're going to click Control X, and that's going to cut it. We're going to go back to the very beginning and we're going to place it right here. And we're going to right click and say Insert Cut Cells. Now, why are we doing this? Because I've already done this entire project. And if you don't do this, You're going to do a join with every single query you do, which if you want to do that, keep it there and then just, change your query for that. I did it like this because I wanted to show joins later on. I wanted to keep it kind of simple at the beginning, and then work my way to a little bit more advanced things, which you will see. It gets semi-advanced, but not too much. I promise. Just stick with me. Let's go back over here. We're going to go to actually double A, and then we're going to click Control Shift Right key. That's going to select everything over here, and we're going to literally delete it. Okay. This is going to be our first table over here. So everything you see over here is our first table. And we're going to save that. So let's save as. I'm just going to keep it in my downloads as, and let's do COVID deaths. So that has our death information. The next one is going to include our vaccination information, which is what we're going to join on. And then we're going to do that later. So let's hit Control Z. That's going to bring it back. Now let's select on Z and go all the way to E. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to delete this. It looks like there's no data, but I promise there is later on. The vaccinations, like total vaccinations, if we go down, you can see that starts on in February, the very end of February in 2021. And that's because vaccinations are, didn't come out until recently. Now let's save this file. And we're going to save as, instead of COVID deaths, we'll do COVID vaccinations. All right, now let's save that. So now we have our two Excels that we want. We need to get them into SQL. We're going to go over to SQL and we're going to create a portfolio project database. I've already done this. All you have to do though is right click new database, type in portfolio project, and then click OK, and it will create your database for you. If you open up the tables, it should be empty, and that's where we're going to put these two Excel files. Now, I had a ton of trouble actually importing these Excels. I tried everything, and I eventually just went down a rabbit hole of how to get these in. I don't know if it's me or what, but I could not figure out how to do it. If you go to Portfolio Project, you hit Tasks, and you hit Import Data, that may do it for you, and it may work. It did not work for me. It kept giving me errors. So what I would recommend you do right off the bat, just to make sure that we're doing the same thing, and you can do it that way if you want. I went over here to start. Again, I'm on a Windows, and I went down to Microsoft SQL Server 2019 and clicked Import and Export. It looks the same, but for whatever reason, all the research that I did, it has to do with the 32-bit versus the 64-bit. When you do it this way, it goes to the 64-bit and it is able to import the data. If you do it the other way, it was doing it the 32-bit version and gives you an error. I don't understand it. Don't ask me. That's the reason. I went down a huge rabbit hole, but this one works. So let's go over here, and this is going to be our data source. Where's the data coming from? It's an Excel file. So let's do that. Let's browse and let's go over to my downloads. I thought I saved it in downloads. Maybe because it's an Excel workbook. What was I saving before? Oh, that's a CSV. Okay. Something important to note is we're doing an Excel and not a CSV. You're going to get the same error. I'm just doing it live and I'm making myself look stupid. So we're going to save it. But instead of a CSV, we're going to save it as an Excel workbook. So let's save that. Now we have to go back to how it was right here. The same way, and we're going to file, save as, and let's do, this is now COVID deaths, and save it as a workbook. Now we have them. Now let's go back. Now we have our COVID deaths and our COVID vaccinations. Let's do our deaths first. Let me get back right here so it looks kind of more normal. So we have our Excel file. We have our COVID deaths. Let's go next. And now we have to say where we're going to place it. Where's our destination? So we're going to click over here and go down to SQL Server Native Client 11.0. I want to say this is something that I messed up and it took me like 45 minutes to figure out. It was the stupidest mistake. It's going to auto-populate a server name. And I never checked to confirm that this was my server name. And so I couldn't figure out why I wasn't able to insert this into my portfolio project database. That's because mine is O1. I created two different servers intentionally. And for whatever reason, I forgot that. And so all I had to do is add O1 over here. So just make sure yours is the same thing. Click portfolio project, click next. Yes, we're going to copy the data. It should auto-populate. If it doesn't, if it gives you like multiple, you can always check mark on the one that you think is the right one. It should be the first one. We'll click next. We'll just click finish. I'm sure it says run immediately. We'll click finish and finish. Now, while this is running, there should be around 89,000. That's how it was like a week ago when I started it, maybe a little more now because there's extra days. With that being said, this is going to be a good size amount of data. We're about to do a lot of different things. We're going to start at the very basics of just like querying the table, like super simple. And then we're going to go into things like joins, CTEs, temp tables, creating views. The whole purpose of what we're about to do is not to keep it too simple. I want to showcase to a potential employer, right, that you can do more advanced things. So I'm going to probably do, I'm looking at, because I have already done this entire project individually. We've probably got like 15 to 20 queries here. You don't have to do all of them. I'm going to walk through all of them and you can choose which ones you want, but you don't have to do all of them. It is quite a few. So just know that. So there's 85,000 right here. That's fantastic. It won't show up immediately. You need to refresh it. And there we go. So that's our COVID vaccinations. Let's get rid of this. So we just have COVID vaccinations. I thought that was our COVID deaths one, but maybe I'm wrong. But let's do the exact same thing down here. And we will import and say next. We're going to go down to Excel and browse. And now we want to do the COVID deaths. Apparently last time we did the vaccinations, which I actually, you know what? I bet what it did was it took this right here as COVID vaccinations, but that was the deaths one as it's saved. So forget that. Let's go right here. Let's do the COVID vaccinations. It just has the same sheet name. So sorry for the confusion. Destination is going to be the exact same place. It's going to be SQL Server native client. Let's add that O1 and let's click refresh. Portfolio project, next. Like I said before, if it does this, just click the first one. It's going to be COVID vaccinations. It did that for the COVID deaths. That's because I made the mistake earlier. I hope when you're watching this, you aren't super confused. The whole point, make two tables or make two Excels. One should be COVID deaths, one should be COVID vaccinations, upload them, and then rename them in a nutshell. So we have the same amount. Let's refresh this. This one is actually the COVID vaccinations. This one is COVID deaths. I'm telling you, this stuff it confuses me sometimes, to be honest. But we're going to query this really quick to make sure we are actually doing what we're supposed to be doing. So let's do select everything from, and let's do portfolio project. And you can do .dbo or you can do ... I tend to just do that because it's easier. Let's look at this one, make sure it's the right table. So we have total cases, new cases, perfect. And let's order on, let's do 3,4 just to make sure. We'll order by, of course. Just to make sure that we have everything that we're looking for. So this looks right. This looks like our Excel. Let's copy this. Let's go down here. We're going to do COVID vaccinations and let's run this one. Make sure the second one came in correctly as well. So perfect. So we have our two tables. This is fantastic news. And now we can get going. We can keep this one. I'm going to comment it out in case, we want to come back to it. I'm going to really quick, again, right here, I have another laptop. I have already done this whole project. So I'm just using it as a guideline to know kind of what I'm doing next so that I don't waste everyone's time. So really quickly, let's select the data that we are going to be using. You don't have to use these comments. I will say that I'm going to specify, I'm going to say, hey, this comment is something I would keep in your portfolio project. I'm going to add a bunch of extra stuff that is not needed just for your purpose. But when you are creating your portfolio project, you shouldn't be adding some of the things that I'm going to be commenting on. So we're going to do, or actually let's do really quick. Let's copy this so that it kind of knows what we're doing. So let's select the location, the date, the total cases, the new cases, the total deaths, and then population. Now where we're at, I'm going to turn off my camera because it's going to start getting in the way, to be honest. I don't want it to interfere with your ability to see what we're doing on screen. So it's been great seeing you guys. I'm going to turn this off and we will continue from here. All right, that should be turned off. So let's keep running. So this is what we're doing. Let's keep this going because I don't like things not being organized. So we have our location. Oh, no, we want to do 1, 2. We want to do it based off the location and the date. Makes everything easier, I promise you. So we're going to be, the first one's obviously Afghanistan. Here's our date. We have our total cases, our new cases, total deaths, and population. So really quick, I'm just going to scroll down just a second. They started having, the total deaths. It started about a month after they got their first case, it looks like. So, and then it just like ramps up a lot. And we're going to be diving into all these numbers, what they mean, you can do some really simple calculations on them. But really quickly, we're just going to do, again, a super simple calculation and one that we do multiple times for different things. So let's go right down here and let's say we're going to be looking at the total cases versus total deaths. So how many cases are there in this country? And then how many deaths do they have per, how many deaths do they have for their entire cases? So let's say they have 1,000 people who've been diagnosed. They had 10 people who died. What's the percentage of people who died who had it? So let's go right down here, and I'm just gonna copy this really quick. It's just gonna make our life easier. I think you should do the same as well. So we have location, date, total cases, and we're gonna get rid of our new cases because we don't need that one in this query right here. Nor do we need this population. So let's work on our calculation really quick. It should be super, super easy. Let me make sure I'm still recording. Perfect. Oh man, we're almost 25 minutes in. Or more, because I have the intro. So now we're going to do, we want to know the percentage of people who are dying who actually get infected or who report being infected. So we're going to do total underscore deaths. We'll go right down here and we're going to divide that by the total cases. Total cases. And if we do this really quick, what it's going to have, and let's go down to where there's actually numbers. So we have 34, we have 1. It's showing 0.029%. If you ever try to get a percentage of something, you have to multiply times 100. So let's do that really quick. All you have to add is the asterisk sign times 100. And while we're here, let's just add the what's called alias. So let's call this death percentage. I don't know. That works for me. And let's take a look at this. It'll be a little bit more accurate. So when there were 34, there was one, and that gives us a 2.94% death rate. And we can go down even further. And this is still all Afghanistan. Let's go down to the very bottom. Let's go down to the very, very bottom. So as of today, yesterday, there were 59,745 total cases in Afghanistan, and there were 22,625 deaths, which is 4%. So you have a 4% chance basically right now of dying. I mean, if you want to look at it like that, 4% chance of dying if you get it and you live in Afghanistan. You don't have to, but really quick, just to look at it further, let's look at where the location, I think it's, let's say real quick, because I'm not 100% if it states. It should, I think it's United States. But yeah, so I live in the United States. If you don't, you can look at your country, but this is genuine, real reported data. So it's really interesting. Right at the beginning, though I don't know if it was the way we were reporting or what, but we had really high percentage rates. As we go down, we're looking at a 5%, 6%. This was the peak of it. This got really bad in the US. I hope it gets better. How many are we at? This is, I'm going to go to the end of this year. We're sitting at around 2 to 3%. It goes down to under 2%. So at the end of the year, we were looking at over 2 million people. That's 20 million 20 million people who have been infected. That's a lot. That's a lot of 20 million people who have had it, 35,000 or 352,000 deaths by the end of the year. That's a lot. Let's keep going. And at the very end, we had over 32,346,971. That's a lot of people who have been infected. There's a lot of deaths, 576,000. And I verified this number. I Googled it. Google knows all. I Googled this number and it's pretty accurate. And it's really sad. That's a lot of lives. And that's 1.78%. So as of right now, if you were to get it today, a rough estimate is around 1 3/4 to 2% chance that you could die from it. So really interesting numbers. This is the kind of exploratory stuff that we're going to be doing. We're going to get a lot more advanced as we go on, but this shows the likelihood. And I'm going to write that. Shows the likely. I hope I'm spelling this right. I'm not spelling this right. Likelihood. I hope that's right. If it's not, I apologize. Likelihood of dying if you contract COVID in your country. Again, rough estimates, but just glancing at the data, that's kind of what we're looking at. Now we're going to look at, and let's go down here. Let's look at the total cases versus the population. Again, we're going to do a lot of this like percentage stuff. It's pretty simple. That will only last for so long, I promise you. But it'll be really, I'm going to keep it on the states just because I'm going to be looking at that one the most, because obviously it's pretty relevant to me. So if you're in another country, filter by your country. You'll be really interested in the stats. I know I was really, really shocked by a lot of the things that we're going to find today. So we're going to keep the location. We're going to keep the date, keep the total cases. But let's change this to population. And then instead of the total cases being here, we're going to put the total cases there and then change this to population. So what is this going to do for us? This is going to show us what percentage of population has gotten COVID. So shows what percentage of population, got COVID. Some of these things, again, they're good to know. The one that I upload to GitHub will have the notes that I recommend keeping. Again, not everything in here is Not everything in here is what, you need to have in there. This is mostly just, you know, what I think you guys need to see while we're actually typing this out. All right, so let's take a look at this. Actually, I want to change this. I want to put this right here, just as easier for me visually. Just because the total cases right here. So our population in the US is around 331 million. So at the beginning when we had one case, I mean, it's like nothing. Let's keep scrolling and see where we get to 1%. So 1%, that's 3,311,312 people. And that happened in, what is that, August of last year. So 1% of the population. Let's keep going all the way down. Again, we're just kind of glancing at this. We're about 10%. Again, we're at that 32 million. So 10% of the population has gotten a test, and it's been confirmed. So really interesting. We'll come back to that one, I'm sure, in the future. We might use this one as like a visualization. Again, I'm only looking at the States or the United States right now, but think about it in terms of how we're going to visualize this in the future. Because a lot of what we're doing, we're going to visualize in the future. In Tableau, I have Tableau even open right here. You can see I have a map. This is just a soup. I threw this together in like 2 seconds. We have the location, and so this is like our future. This is what you need to be envisioning when you're looking at this data. So we have Afghanistan, and let's just scroll through Belarus and Bolivia and Bulgaria and Cambodia, and every single country that is reporting. So we're just looking at the states, but remember, all of these are going to be used. So just something to remember. I want to know, and I'm really curious as to what countries have the highest infection rates compared to the population. So we were just looking at our population up here. How are we going to do this? We'll do, actually, let me write it out really quick. So let's looking at countries with highest infection rate compared to population. So that's what this script is going to do, or this query is going to do. I'm going to copy this. So we're going to keep the location. We are not going to keep the date, because this is not going to be date specific. This is just going to be overall. And then we're going to look at the max of the total cases. So we only want to look at the highest. So when we were looking at the US, we had 32 million. We don't want to look at every single of the total cases. We only look at the very highest one. So we want to look at the max total cases. And let's right here, we'll just say, give it an alias, at least something to recognize it. So highest, I guess we can say infection count. So we'll say highest infection count. That's the highest infection count per country. So per location. And then we want to also take, because since we don't have max total cases here, if we just kept total cases here, it'll give us the same one that we were looking at in this above query. What we need to do is we need to look at the max of this. So we're going to look at max and just add a parenthesis there. And we'll look at, this isn't the death percentage anymore. I forgot to change that in this last one. This is, what is this? It's percent of population infected. So let's change that for both of these, because I don't want to get confused when you're looking at the column headers later. So we'll look at the percent of population infected. Let's run this and see what we get. List is not contained in either the aggregate. Oh, I need to add a group by, of course. So let's add group by. And we need to group by both the population and the location. So let's try that really quick. Let's see if this works. Awesome. Well, we ordered on location and population, but I really want to look at the highest. So let's just see really quick. Look at some of these numbers. We got like 1%, 4%. 10%. Okay, so yeah. What we want to do is order on this percent population infected. So let's go ahead and do that. And let's do that descending. So the descending gets the highest number first. My goodness, 17%. So what percentage of your population has gotten COVID? It's been reported, and we can see that now. So the very first one, small population, so it doesn't surprise me. But if you look right down here, so that's that 32 million that we were talking about. That's that max of total cases, which is the highest number of our infection count. So we have 33. So we're right up there on the list. Let's look for other large countries. I mean, it's us. There's Israel, there's Belgium, Portugal, France. So, we're up almost to about 10% in a lot of these countries. So some of us, including the United States, we are in there as well. Some of us have really high percentage rates. We just did not keep it under control. And a large amount of the population has gotten it. That's what this one shows. Now let's look kind of at the sad side of things. We were just looking at how many people were infected. Let's look at how many people actually died. So let's do, let's comment and we'll say this is showing the countries with the, let's do highest, am I spelling that right? Yeah, highest death count per population. Now, how are we going to do this? Let's copy this off the bat, but I don't know if we're going to do it the exact same way because we just need location and not much else, honestly. So let's get rid of all this stuff. But we're looking at the highest death count. So like we did up here with the max total cases, we're going to do max and then we'll do total deaths. I hope it's like this. Total deaths. And then we'll do as total death count. And we'll order that by the total death count. See, I don't need this. I think, I need to group by because there's an aggregate function. And let's try this really quick. Okay. So if you're getting this, there's a simple / confusing explanation to this. Total deaths right now, let's go into our COVID deaths columns. Okay, let's show the total deaths, which is right here. It's an nvarchar 255. It's an issue with the data type. Total deaths. No. Total deaths right here. It's an issue with the data type. It just has to do with how the data type is read when you use this aggregate function. We need to convert it or cast it is what we're actually do. We need to cast this as an integer. So that's read as a numeric. Why? I cannot 100% give you a perfect explanation for it, but this happens all the time. You just need to look at the data and realize, oh, it's probably because of this data type. Let's try something else and then it'll work. So let's cast this, and casting it I find is just easier, but just as int, boom. There you go. So now we're taking this nvarchar 255 over here, and then we are converting it to an integer. Now let's run this, and let's get rid of this just for visual purposes. Now we are much more accurate, but we have a slight issue, or we're now seeing a slight issue with our data. In our data, in the location section, we have a few ones that really shouldn't be there. Ones like world or Africa or South America. These are grouping entire continents. So let's go back up to our, let's go back up here and let's do, actually, let's pull it up really quick because this is just part of exploring the data and figuring it out. So if we scroll down, we're gonna see one like where is it? Right here. This location is all of Asia, whereas in other ones the continent is Asia. If I can pull one up real quick. So like right here, the continent is Asia, whereas before the location is Asia. But if you also notice, the continent is null here. So what we need to do is say where continent is not null. Because when it is null, that means that this location is actually an entire continent and we don't want that. That may be helpful for us later on, but is not helpful now. So now this right here will get rid of that. And just knowing that, figuring that out now, we can add that to every script. And we can do, you don't have to do this. I'm just doing this for, visual purposes. I'm not going to do that for everyone. So let's say where continent is not null. And now let's look at this. And now you can see that the United States is number one. And so number one is not the best thing to be number one in, but we have a death count of 576,000. And again, I Googled this earlier. These numbers are pretty accurate. Some of them are like a day or two behind. Give me a second. I'm going to take a sip of water. They're like a couple days behind. This number is actually higher. And as we continue to have more people die, unfortunately, that number just continues to go up. So the data set that you download may be a lot higher. As of right now, we've been breaking everything out by location, right? Really quickly, let's just do this by something we kind of saw earlier. And I'm just going to do this for breaking it up purposes. But I'm going to do caps lock. Let's break things down by continent. How do you spell continent? Continent. Jeez, is that even how you spell it? I don't even know. Let's keep going. But now we can do continent right here. And we'll just copy and paste that. Let's get that back up here. And now we can see where continent is not null. Let's see if that makes that. Yeah. Okay. So now it's breaking it out by continents with North America, South America, Asia, Europe, Africa, Oceania. Is this perfect? No, it's not perfect. North America looks like it's only including the numbers from the United States and not Canada. So we have some small issues in here. But for the purposes of what we're trying to do, which I don't think anyone's going to come in here and fact check us or check the data. They may, and then you might be screwed. But for the purposes of hierarchy, and that drill down effect in Tableau, which is something we are going to do, we want to start including this continent in our queries so that we can drill down further into these things. We can also do where. Just wait. I'm going to do where is null. Actually, let me see. So before we were doing where continent is not null, but let's do location. I'm doing this on the fly. I haven't done this before. I just kind of am doing this. This actually is the correct numbers. And I don't know why I didn't do this before when I was actually creating this project, but now this is a wonderful, beautiful thing. I believe this is the correct numbers. I could verify, but I don't want to do that live because I might look stupid, but I think this is accurate. Remember before we were looking at the location and the location, and it was actually the countries itself. And then there were ones where we did where is not null to get rid of all the ones that were like world and all those other things. Well, now I'm just filtering on those instead of deleting them. Before we were looking at everything but these. Now we're only looking at these, and these numbers look a lot more accurate. So with that being said, I'm going to use this going forward in my script. So I'm going to kind of change things up to where from what I originally had. Let me see though, because if that is the case, it may screw up our drill down effect, which is highly unfortunate. I honestly might just revert back to it for the pure fact that we want the visualizations to look correct. Just know that this is the right way. And if you want to go back and do that, I highly encourage that. I didn't figure that out my first time around. But I'm willing to admit when I'm wrong. Let me do a time check. I run it like 50 minutes or so. I think we're just gonna keep going all the way through. I don't think we're gonna stop. I don't think we're gonna stop in this project. So we want to do some of the above queries were kind of what we were going for. Nothing crazy difficult, right? Nothing crazy hard. And now we want to start breaking this out by continent as well. I'm going to go back and is this correct? Let me look. No. So is not no. So we want to start doing some of the above queries, but adding that continent in there. You can even go back and add that as well. If you want to, that's totally fine. I'm going to do some more queries down here. Or at least one or two more. And then we're going to start getting, I think, into some a little bit more advanced things. We're going to start getting into some temp tables, stuff like that, because we're going to eventually set these up in views so that we have these views to use for Tableau later. And again, it shows you know how to create a view. So that's important. So we've done this first one. This next one is going to, let me go down one more. This is showing the continents with the highest death count. So almost the exact same as we did before, but now we're looking at the continents. We can even go up and look at, just wait, we literally just did that. So that's what this one is actually. Looking at my notes wrong. Idiot. Okay, perfect. Now we want to start looking at this from a viewpoint of I'm going to visualize this. So how do we do that? Well, we want to let's look at some global numbers. You can do as many of these as you want. Anything up here, just add continent to it. Anything where it's like group by, just replace it with continent and you got it. So I don't want to go through and do every single one of those, but that is kind of the gist of what you might want to do, especially if you want that drill down effect. And if you don't know what that is, it's like clicking on North America. And then when you bring up North America, then it shows all the countries in North America. So Canada and the United States. And so it's a drill down. So you click on Africa and then there's all the African countries. That's what drilling down does. And that's what you can do when you have those layers. So you have the continent, then you have the location. I'm not going to, we'll look at that when we actually get to Tableau, but I don't want to actually spend all the time writing that out. But what we now want to do is we want to calculate everything across the entire world. So let's do this. Let's say let's do global. Let's just say global numbers. Easier than nothing. All right. Let me really quick find I think it's probably the first one, the death percentage. Let me see if this is one that we want. Okay. Let me see. All right. So let's take this one. I'm sorry that took me a while to find. Again, I'm not cutting any of this stuff out. You just got to stick with me. If you're sticking with me this long, I know you care. I know you're not cutting away because I'm trying to figure things out on my side. So let me get rid of this. So this is the exact same let's say where, just so we can get the right numbers. So we are now going to look at the global numbers. So we're not going to include any location, any continent, or anything like that. But we do want to make sure that we're only looking at all of the countries, and we're not looking at the world numbers plus all the countries, because then the numbers would get astronomical. So instead of now we can't do. So let's try running this really quick. So now we really can't do this because now it's breaking everything out by that, which is the date. It's breaking everything out by the date because these total cases, the numbers are different, right? So really quick, let's group by date. And now let's see what it looks like. It's going to give us an error, obviously. That's because we're looking at, that's because when we're looking at this, we're looking at multiple things and we can't group by just the dates. Obviously, if we wanted to group by something, which we need to do, we then need to start using aggregate functions on everything else. So really quickly, let's do some aggregate functions. I'm looking at my notes for just a second to see what I did. Basically what we want to do, and I think what'll make things easier is, I could try to do the sum of max total cases. I don't think that's possible. Let me comment this out really quick. Yeah, it's because there's an aggregate function within an aggregate function, and we can't really do that. If we go back to the data, and we kind of looked at this earlier, there's one called new cases. Let's use this because instead of doing max, we can just sum it or do a sum on it. And that's going to give us the sum of all the new cases, which adds up to the total cases. So if we do this, let's see, this will give us on each day the total across the world, because we're not filtering by any continent or we're filtering out like the world and in the actual continents. We're not filtering by location or continent or anything. It's just by date. So we're looking at the sum of the new cases. So now let's do the sum of new underscore deaths. And we can run that one. Operator data type and varchar is invalid for the sum operator. So going back, and this is something that I encountered a lot when I was doing this, is these new cases is a float, which is why it's working in the sum, but the new deaths is an varchar. So what we need to do again is cast that as an integer. It's just the easiest thing to do. And now that one should work. So let's get rid of let's get rid of down to here. So we're about to do another one, and that's going to be our death percentage globally across the, I guess, the world. So we need to do the sum of, we need to do new deaths. All right, divided by the sum of new cases. All right, times 100. Let's see what this takes us. Okay, of course we're getting the same thing. Let me put this right here and see if this works. Invalid data. Oh, that's because this was new cases. The new deaths one is right here. And let's run this. And now we are looking good. And as you can see, the death percentage is right here. We have 91. And let me give these, let me go back real quick and just say as total cases, as total deaths. And let's run that again. Okay. And so across the world, these are our numbers. So we have total cases on that very first day that cases were starting to be reported. There were 98 total cases. There was 1 total death. That gives a death percentage of 1% across the country or across the world. And as we scroll down, it gets lower and lower. And that's because we have a lot of people who have gotten infected, or the total cases. And again, that's per day, right? So if we remove this altogether, that date altogether, which we can do right now, this will This will give us the total cases, which is, oh gosh, let me read this. 150 million versus 3,180,206. So overall, across the world, we are looking at a death percentage of a little over 2%. So yeah, interesting numbers. You can keep both of those queries separate if you'd like. They might come in handy later. But let's do this. So we have, give me 1 second, checking my notes again, because I just want to make sure I'm not doing something stupid. All right. All right. So again, we have a whole nother table that we haven't used yet. It's this COVID vaccinations. And just to refresh your memory, let's do let's look at the table from portfolio project COVID vaccinations. Let's jog our memory on what we got here. So we have these tests, we have vaccinations over here, which was what we're actually going to be using. Excuse me. That's what we are going to be using. So let's join these two tables together. And let's actually just do let's just do this whole thing. Let's do COVID deaths. And here's how we're going to join it. So we're going to say join, and we're going to say, oops, wait, that is wrong. Join, and we're going to say on. So what are we going to join them on? We're going to join them on two things. We're going to join them on location, because that's much more specific than the continent. We're going to join them on location, and we're going to join them on date. Let's call this one DEA. Let's call this one vaccination. So a little alias for these so that we don't have to type out this entire table name each time. So let's do DEA.location is equal to VAC.location and DEA. And we'll say date is equal to VAC.date. And let's just see what we get really quick. So we'll have all of these things, and let's look at Granada 0717. And let's go all the way over here. And it should have Granada 0717. So just making sure that they were joined correctly. For this query, what we're going to do is look at the total population, and let's do that right here. So looking at total population versus vaccination. So how many, what is the total amount of people in the world that have been vaccinated? That is what we're going to do in this query right here. So let's do DEA.continent location, DEA.date. Again, these are going to be the same in either one, but we have to specify. Let me just, for example, if we do population, oh, actually, that's a terrible example because population is only in one. Let me go back really quick. Let me say I only write date. That's going to give me an error because there's date in both of them. In fact, we joined it on them. So we know there's date in both of them. So it's going to give us an error. We just have to specify what table we want to pull it from. So we're going to do DEA and DEA.population just to keep it consistent. And now we're going to add the next one, let's do new vaccinations. And really quick, let's just look at this. And let me get my orders because I want it to be organized. I actually let's do 1, 2, 3. I don't like it when it's not organized. It bothers me. So we're looking at, oh no, I also need to add where continent is not null. There we go. DEA. Perfect. Now let's run this. This should look much better. There we go. All right. We are, in fact, if we want to look at Afghanistan, like we have normally been doing in previous ones, we do 2/3. So there's our population. Here's our new vaccinations. Now, let's see. We're going to go down, and let's see. They have vaccinations starting on 2/18. If we go even further down, let's just go to, who's this? Canada? Oh yeah, Canada will be a good one to look at. They started doing vaccinations on right here. So 12/15. I mean, they started very early, and their numbers only increased, and now they're doing, this is per day, right? So this is 288,000 in one day. So that's really high numbers. But this is the number of new vaccinations. There is a column called total vaccinations in this table, but we're going to do something pretty, just to display, again, this whole portfolio project is to show potential employers that you know how to do certain things. So I want to set up opportunities to do that. We're not going to use the total vaccinations. We're going to use this new vaccinations, which is new vaccinations per day. So we want to know, or do kind of like a rolling count out here. So as this number, let me go back to the beginning. As this number increases, 718, 2300, 4179, we want it to add up over here. It's a pretty cool thing. I mean, it's, once you see it, you'll be like, oh, that's pretty easy. But, we're going to be using partition by, we're going to be using, this is a Windows function. So it's really good to showcase, I think. So we're going to do, and let's do, we need to do the sum because we're going to be adding these together. So we need to do the sum of new vaccinations. Oops. We need to do the sum of new vaccinations. Let's do over. And we're going to say partition, partition by. And we need to partition by the location first and foremost, because we're breaking it up by, if we do it by continent, the numbers are going to be completely off. We need to do it by location. Location and also partly the date, but you'll see that in just a second. But we need to partition it by breaking it up by location. And why is that? Because every time it gets to a new location, we want the count to start over. We don't want this aggregate function to just keep running and running and running. It'll ruin all of our numbers. We only want it to partition on the location so that it runs only through Canada. And then when it gets to the next country, it doesn't keep going. And if we only did that, by the way, let's look at what this looks like. Okay, real quick, I need to cast this as an integer like we've been doing in the past. You can also do, real quick, I want to show you another one. Convert, and I think it's comma integer. Or is it integer comma? Let me try integer comma. I think it's that way actually. And you can do it this way as well. That is up to you. Either one is totally fine. If you want to use both, that's even better because then it kind of shows that you can do both. But they basically do the exact same thing. So let's go down and let's see what's happening here. So it goes down to Albania. And since we're partitioning on Albania, their total amount of vaccinations is 347,000. I know that going into it because it has it on every single stinking row. But down here, they started to add up, right? But we didn't do that. We only partitioned on location. So it did the sum of all the new vaccinations by that location. So what we need to do is go over here and say order by, and we need to order it by both the location, da.location, and the date. That is very important. The date is what's going to separate it out. And you'll see in just a second what I mean. So now let's run this and let's go back down to Albania, I think it was. So here's Albania. Let's go to our first one. So here's what we have. We have 60 and it gives us 60. Then we add 78. So we add 60 plus 78 equals 138. Then 78 plus 178, sorry, 60 plus 78 plus 42 equals 180. Then 60 plus 78 plus 142 plus 61, 241. So you get the point. It adds up every single consecutive one. And when there's nulls or there's zeros, it's going to not add anything. It's just going to keep it going. And then you can see as it's a rolling count. So we're going to name this. Let's do as let's do as rolling people vaccinated. Let's call that. I think that's good. Now what we want to do is actually look at the total population versus the vaccinations. And really what we want to do is use this rolling people vaccinated. We want to use the max number because at the very bottom is our max number. This is how many people in Albania. We want to use that number and then divide it by the population to know how many people in that country are vaccinated. So what we want to do is we'll do this. We'll do rolling people vaccinated divided by population times 100. And as you can see, we're getting an error. You can't use a column that you just created to then use in the next one. So what we need to do is we need to create either a CTE or a temp table. This is the time of the show, of this tutorial, whatever you want to call it, where I'm going to give you some options. You can do one, you could do both. There's no preference to me, but we're going to take this and we're going to, at least for this first one, we're going to use a CTE. So we're going to say, excuse me, we're going to say with, and let's call it pop versus vac. I don't know. Population versus vaccination. And then all we need to do is specify the basically the columns that we're going to input. So let's put as, and then let's insert that down here, because what we need to do is we want to say we're going to do continent. Oh gosh, I'm so bad at spelling continent. Location, date, population, and then we'll have this rolling people vaccinated. And that should be it. And let's see if there's, we just need to close this parenthesis. So this is our CTE. It should be working. Actually, that's not true. I need an open parentheses here. That's why it's giving me that error. Let's see, I'm still getting an error. So let me see if I'm doing something wrong. I have this in parentheses. There and there. I say with pop back. There's continent, location, date, population. I believe that is the issue. So then we just need to add that last column, new vaccinations. If the number of columns in the CTE is different than the number of columns here, it's going to give you an error. So you got to make sure. And then let's just say for right now, select everything from, and we can even say pop versus vac. It'll come up right away. So really quickly, let's run this and see what happens. The order by clause can't be in there. I knew that, but whoops. Let's comment that out. Yeah, let's get that all the way up here. Let's run this. So now that query that we were looking at before is now in here, but now we can actually use it to perform further calculations. So we'll just do everything, comma, and then we'll do rolling people vaccinated divided by And that needs to be population times 100. I'm pretty sure this is incorrect. Give me a second. Invalid object. Oh, it's because I have to run it with the CTE. My bad. So let's look at this percentage really quick. It's not wrong. It's actually going to give us a rolling number, and this may actually be what we want. So basically what it's doing is it's taking this column and doing it versus this column. And so this number should only increase because as this number increases, this number will increase because the population stays stagnant. Again, I'm kind of looking at this as we go. So right now, 12% of the population in Albania is vaccinated. So that, that's all we know. I don't think we need to go any further than that. I think if you want to, you can look at the max one, but you'll have to get rid of date and just keep the location, population, et cetera, because the date is going to throw everything off. So if that's something you want to do, absolutely do that. You can use a temp table here. We can look at how to do that really quickly, I think, so that you guys know how to do that. Again, I recommend throwing in one or two of these. Like even up here, you can do different counts and then do one for each. So let's do temp table. All right. So it's going to be a lot of the same stuff. We're going to keep this, and this is going to be what we insert. So let's say insert into, and we need to write where we're inserting it into, but let's say, again, I'm only doing this for, it's going to be basically the same. It's going to have the same effect, but with a temp table. So we're going to do temp table, and let's look at, let's call percent population vaccinated. And we need to specify our columns. So let's go down here. Excuse me. Let's go down here and let's do basically the exact same thing. So continent, I think I spelled that right. No, I didn't spell that right. I almost did. I got really confident. We'll do, and just so you know, for these, we have to specify the data type as well, because we're basically creating like a genuine table. It's just a temporary one. So let's do varchar 255. We'll do location. We'll do the same thing. Varchar 255. We need to do date, and we'll do that as date time. We'll do population, and we can do, I mean, there's lots of different ones we can do, but we'll do numeric for this example. There's new underscore vaccinations, and let's do that one as numeric. Again, you can use different things, and then we'll do rolling people vaccinated. This can be numeric as well. And then we need to insert that into here. Okay, so we're inserting the data, and then down here, we can actually select it. And let's take this and do right here, except we're going to be doing this by this right here. But it hasn't been created yet, but it will be created in just a second. Okay, so let me see. Yeah. So these were the rows that were affected, and then we got our actual output from this right here. Now, let's say you wanted to change something in here. You're like, oh, I don't want to do it where this. Let me comment that out. And then let me do this and create that table again. Oh, no, we got an error. How can we get around this? Very simple. I've done this I should do this in a different one. You can do drop table if exists, and then do this right here. And when we run this, it should give us our output. I highly recommend just adding this, especially if you plan on making any alterations, so that when you run it multiple times, you don't have to, go and then delete the view or delete the temp table or drop temp table, or, it's just built in, it's at the top, it's easy to maintain, and it looks good. It's something that a lot of people do. And so if you have that at the top of your query and somebody, uh, somebody who wants to hire you looks at this, they're like, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm glad they included that. They know what they're doing. This guy's smart. I should hire them. Now what we're going to do is, I feel like I've showed you as much as I can show you with the limited data that we've looked at. Again, I could have done this for 6 hours straight if I had used all the data, at least. I mean, there's just so much data. But let's create a view. I'm only going to show you how to create one view, but I want you to go back and create multiple views. If this is one that you want to look at, these global numbers, let's look at this one really quick. If you want to look at this number right here, toss it in a view. I mean, that one doesn't make sense to toss in a view, but this one, toss these numbers in a view. And we're going to look at it in Tableau later. But for right now, let's just create our view. So let's just say creating view to store data for later visualizations. All right, so let's say create view, and I'm just going to keep the same thing like that. And for views, it's so easy. I mean, I'm literally just going to, and I can even take the order by, I believe. We'll see if I'm correct. Actually, let's get rid of both of these things. So it says create view, percent population vaccinated. And let's see, am I doing anything wrong here? Let me see. The order by clause, oh, I was completely wrong. I was wondering why I was getting that. Now let's try running it. Okay, so it ran successfully. Let's look at our views. It's not going to be in there. Let's refresh it. Hey, look, we got our very first view. We can open that up like a table if we want to. It's gorgeous. If you want to get rid of that, Control Shift R. That's a refresh, and now it basically recognizes it. But let's go back here for a second, and we can now query off of that. It's a view now, so it's something that you can. It's permanent. You have to go in and actually delete it. It's not like a temp table. This is now permanent, and this could be something that we now use for a visualization later. So do some of these. Look at some of the queries that we've looked at and create a few of these views, and we will use them later. Normally, in a normal setting, if I was actually working, I would put some of these in actual, I would call them like a work view or a work table or something set aside so that I can use them consistently. But I would also set them aside so that I could connect Tableau to that view. Now we're going to be using something called Tableau Public. That'll be in the very next tutorial. Unfortunately, let me see if I can show you. I can't show you. Tableau Public does not connect to SQL databases. And that's because it's free. And I totally get it. You have to pay for the upgraded version, but I am not a billionaire, okay? I cannot afford the real version of Tableau. I'm also not like a student or like something where I can get it cheap. So I'm not paying for that. So we're gonna use Tableau Public, and I recommend this anyways because anybody can access it. It's free for anybody. So we're going to be using Tableau in the next one to actually visualize a lot of these things. I want to get at least 5 visualizations. We're going to create a dashboard. It's going to be a beautiful, beautiful thing. All right, so the very last thing that we are going to do is we are going to actually save this and then put it into GitHub. And I just want to show you how to do that. That's where we're going to be storing our code, at least for now. So let's go up here. Let's click File. Let's click Save As. I've already have multiple versions of this. Let's just push V2. We're going to save that. So we have this saved now. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to go to my GitHub. Now, if you don't have an account, I highly recommend getting an account so you can start putting your portfolio projects in here. Of course, we're not going to put our Tableau one in here, but our SQL ones and our Python ones you can put in here. Again, I'll talk a lot more about how we actually want to display this in GitHub or other places. But what we're going to do for this is we're going to create a new repository. Let's call this one Portfolio Projects. Make it public. We'll create the repository. We'll do all that extra stuff later. So what we now want to do is upload an existing file. We'll click right there, go to choose files, and we'll click this latest one that we saved, and we'll open it. And we can always change the name of it later on, and you can add notes if you'd like, but we'll commit that change. So we'll actually upload this, this file. But let's look at it really quick. And I'm going to go back and I'm going to use the real one where it has the formatting and the notes that I had that I wanted to add in there. But as you can see, you can see all of the queries that we wrote, and this is fantastic. So if somebody comes in here, we'll have more notes and kind of better comments on what they do, and what the takeaway is this for a hiring manager to, when they actually look at this. So this is a really, really good place to start. Again, this may not be your optimal place to put this. I'll give you a few different options in a later video about how we can actually potentially improve upon this. I'm really looking forward to getting more portfolio projects done so we can actually start building a complete portfolio. If you've stuck around all this way, I just want to say congratulations. I mean, I know this was a long video. I know that it took a long time, but you stuck with me. You put in the hard work, and that is fantastic. And I really hope that it pays off, and I hope that this has been helpful. Thank you for watching. We'll have a lot more videos in the future on these portfolio projects, and I'm just really, really looking forward to doing them, to be honest. So thank you for sticking with me. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, be sure to like and subscribe below, and I will see you in the next video.